Hey everyone, this is James from Brewing Books. For today's video, I thought I would do something different. I've been following the Rings of Power series, and quite a number of theories have cropped up during the show's airing. Now, what I think about the show so far, I've already left a quick review of the first two episodes, at least in a previous video, but I won't say anything else about the matter. However, it's fun to speculate, and one of the hottest debates currently raging is the identity of the character of Halbrand. So before we continue, what follows is just an opinion, and I'm interested to hear your own thoughts and ideas on this. So first off, warning, spoilers lie ahead for the Rings of Power series up to the 7th episode. This is what many viewers are claiming. Halbrand is Sauron. There seem to be a number of clues scattered throughout each episode that seem to point towards such a conclusion. The presence of the Dark Lord has lingered throughout the series, making audiences wonder and question where and how Sauron will finally reveal himself. And with the season finale airing this Friday, it seems that we will finally be offered a solution to this mystery. First of all, who is Halbrand? Played by actor Charlie Vickers, Halbrand is a character created specifically for the Rings of Power series. He does not feature in any of Tolkien's works, nor is there a figure in the books who was said to be the king of the Southlands. Actually, there isn't even a Southlands reference in the books at all. We meet Halbrand in the second episode, Adrift, who eventually separates himself from the other survivors to save the elf Galadriel. He is taken to Númenor, displays promising blacksmithery and sword-wielding skills, is imprisoned, and eventually finds himself sailing back to Middle-earth to help the Númenorian contingent defeat the orcs in the Southlands and reclaim his kingship. Ever since the beginning, even before the start of the series, rumors started to spread of people's suspicions about this character, claiming him to be Sauron in disguise. Now, whether these people are aware or not of the show's behind-the-scenes intentions from the start is not something I or anyone else can be certain of. Now, while the character seems to know more than he reveals, and some secret certainly lies with him, I somehow find it difficult for Halbrand to be the Dark Lord himself. But let's start from the beginning, his name. What did Tolkien value above all else in the creation of his secondary world? Language. So let's look at the etymology of the word Halbrand. Now, there are two possible angles to tackle this from. If we took the Elvish language of Sindarin, we might be able to discern two words that form this name. Hal, meaning tall, and Brand, which seems to imply a similar meaning of tall or towering, but with more emphasis on a person's rank rather than physical appearance. So Brand can indeed mean sublime or lofty, high or noble. So if the show's creators were paying attention and have done their research well, they would know that in order to create a new character and give him a name in Tolkien's world, the professor himself would have assimilated or coined such a name from words that somehow refer to that character's disposition. So, in Sindarin, Halbrand could in essence mean the tall noble man, a fitting title for one who claims to be king of the Southlands. But Tolkien was also professor of Old English, and whilst Hal means healthy, sound or safe, Brand signifies torch or sword. So in essence, Halbrand in Old English may become the healthy flame, or stretching it a bit further, the strong sword. Yet interestingly, Hal has another definition in Old English, that of a secret place, which may further imply the character hiding his true nature. So why are some people thinking Halbrand is Sauron? Besides claiming that by concealing his identity he remains hidden from Galadriel's insistent quest to seek him out, not to mention his blacksmithing skills, let's not forget Sauron was also a blacksmith. The scene where Halbrand confronts Adar in the 6th episode of the series seems to have solidified these people's claims. The argument is that Halbrand's hostility towards Adar is not because the corrupted elf killed someone he loved, but because he attempted to kill Sauron himself. In fact, Adar claims to have killed Sauron later on, at least his then physical form. And this, people are saying, may be the reason why Adar cannot recognize the Dark Lord in his new form, and why Halbrand is so intent on killing him. It's all an interesting theory which in reality may still turn out to be correct, but I still believe it is somewhat far-fetched. Admittedly, the liberties taken by the show's creators would pale in comparison to such a theory becoming true. But while the idea of having Sauron hiding in plain sight and revealing himself in a big twist in the finale is tantalizing, it may now be too obvious, beside the fact that people are now expecting it to happen. So, just for the sake of argument and pure fun, here's some thoughts on why he may not be Sauron, but is rather another agent of evil. It's time to have a look at what Tolkien tells us about Sauron himself. A Maya, so a divine spirit, Sauron was the most skilled blacksmith in Middle-earth, who could shapeshift or disguise himself to deceive his enemies. In fact, and here's another spoiler for any future Rings of Power seasons, he manages to deceive the elves into creating the Rings of Power themselves by disguising himself as the elf Anatar. Sauron is also responsible for the downfall of Númenor, as he conceals his true identity from the king and turns the island's people against the Valar. Now, I've always seen the character of Adar as being present to lay the groundwork, as it were, before the arrival of his master. He is, after all, gathering orcs under him and helps reignite Mount Doom and establish the land of Mordor. Another thing which struck me was how Adar never mentioned Sauron by name, except once. Even when the character of Waldrek kept pestering him about serving the Dark Lord, he seemed annoyed by the name. And that's where we find a quote in Chapter 1 of The Two Towers as Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli investigate the dead Uruk-hai after the breaking of the Fellowship. Legolas says Sauron does not use the elf runes, to which Aragorn replies, neither does he use his right name, nor permit it to be spelt or spoken. So Adar's refusal to say Sauron's name may be an indication of his subservience towards his master, and that his initial claim that he killed him is baseless, and just another lie to conceal the eventual arrival of his master. Then again, Adar mentions Sauron's name once to Galadriel when making this same claim. His expression and behavior is that of contempt, which you may argue is a further justification for it being true, and that he actually acted out as a rebel against Sauron. Now, while timelines and events have been significantly compressed and reshuffled around to accommodate the narrative in the show, at this point in time, according to Tolkien, Sauron would have been spreading his shadow over men, assailing the elven kingdoms and gaining dominion over Middle-earth. So far, whilst Sauron's presence can be felt throughout in each episode, by both characters and events taking place, Sauron himself remains in hiding, whether in disguise or physically concealing himself from others. Now, when Amazon released a trailer for the show and gave us the first glimpse of this character, I was convinced it was Sauron. Having now seen the first 7 episodes, I am pretty confident that this is not the case. Admittedly, the character, referred to as the Dweller, is still confusing to me, and I'm curious to find out under which species or character they fall under. What is certain is that this being is evil and is pursuing some goal perhaps entrusted to them by Sauron himself. But I digress. Now, although any reveal is usually foreshadowed through a series of clues well before the big reveal itself, I still think we have yet to see Sauron, whether in disguise or true form. Let us not forget that Tolkien wrote how it was Anatar, Lord of Gifts, Sauron's disguise, which aided the elves in the forging of the Rings of Power. So Sauron, at this point in the show, should already be in Eregion, with Celebrimbor and the other elves preparing for the forging of the rings, far away from the trials of Halbrand and Galadriel, And perhaps in the final episode we will get a glimpse of the influence he's already wielding among the elves. But what of Halbrand? Recently, someone suggested the brilliant idea that he is none other than the King of the Dead, which we see later on in The Lord of the Rings. And this would make sense given how he and his people were men of the mountains, close to the so-called Southlands in the show. However, I am inclined to follow a different thread. If his identity is confirmed as being indeed the King of the Southlands, he is still a man able to be corrupted by the evil influence of Sauron. Perhaps, as the series progresses and Sauron forges the One Ring, he will give out 9 rings to 9 mortal men, lords and kings of men. Not the Witch King himself, perhaps, given that he was probably one of the 3 lords of Numenor to be corrupted, nor even Khamûl, the Easterling, but perhaps Halbrand is destined to claim another of these rings and fall under Sauron's shadow to become one of the Ringwraiths. But the truth is, I could be completely wrong about all of this. My wish is that if the show's creators have done their work well, then the majority of people's suspicions towards Halbrand and all the seemingly evident clues pointing towards him being Sauron were all just a clever ruse to distract us from the real twist and the true identity of Sauron. But as I said before, that's just speculation, and it's fun to speculate. And our answers should hopefully be given in this week's episode. In the meantime, what are your thoughts and ideas on this matter? As always, thanks for watching, like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!